My name is Lena Ross. I'm 23 years old. Your sister has real potential. You should learn something practical, my father said, as he signed away $175,000 that had my name on it, money my grandparents had been saving since the day I was born. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw a single plate across that kitchen. I picked up my backpack, walked out the front door with $340 to my name, and I never looked back. Last Tuesday, my parents walked into my office on the 18th floor of a glass tower in downtown Seattle. My mother's knees buckled, but not because of the skyline, not because of the reception desk, not even because of the 38 employees working just outside the conference room. It was the way I looked at her, the way you look at a stranger who walked into the wrong life. But to understand what happened in that office, you need to understand what happened 5 years earlier at a kitchen table in Maplewood, Washington, and the one piece of paper my father never knew existed. Let me take you back to March of 2021, the week everything changed. I grew up in a pale blue 2-story house on Alder Ridge Drive, white trim, a neat front yard, and a mailbox my father repainted every spring because in our house, appearances mattered more than anything. From the outside, we looked perfect. From the inside, we were something else entirely. We ran like a system, a quiet, controlled system. And my father, Daniel Ross, was the one in charge. He was a senior operations manager at a logistics firm in Seattle. Always on time, always in control. Crisp shirts, polished shoes, firm handshake. The kind of man who treated life like a spreadsheet, every decision calculated, every outcome measured. He controlled every dollar that entered our home. My mother, Karen Ross, didn't even have a credit card in her own name until she was 45. That should tell you everything. The rules in our house were never spoken out loud. They didn't have to be. My younger sister, Ava, 2 years younger, louder, brighter, and the unquestioned center of my father's world got everything. New phone every year, dance competitions across state lines, her own bedroom, freshly renovated, while I was moved into a narrow guest room at 14 because Ava needed space to grow. Ava got opportunities, I got responsibilities, dishes, laundry, quiet expectations. The unspoken role of helping my mother keep everything running while my father invested in the future. And I was good at drawing, really good. My art teacher, Mrs. Bennett, once told me I had the kind of visual thinking that design schools compete for. She helped me put together a portfolio, weeks of work, late nights, revisions, and even wrote me a recommendation letter for a summer program at the Pacific Design Institute. I remember placing it carefully on the kitchen counter. My father looked at it for maybe 4 seconds. Drawing isn't a career. Lena, it's a hobby. He set it aside and never mentioned it again. But the college fund, that was supposed to be different. My grandparents, my mom's parents, had opened 2 custodial accounts the year we were born. One for Ava, one for me. $175,000 each. 18 years of deposits, interest, and intention. My father announced it one Thanksgiving when I was 15. He stood at the head of the table, wine glass in hand, like he was presenting quarterly results. Both my daughters have their future secured, he said. $175,000 each. Fully funded. No one touches it. The whole table applauded. Aunt Melissa, Uncle Greg, cousins, everyone. I remember standing there afterward, staring at the living room wall. Every frame was Ava, her dance trophies, her awards, her smiling photos in bright costumes under stage lights. There was one picture of me. One. A blurry family Christmas photo from years ago. Half my face hidden behind my father's shoulder, tucked into the corner near the thermostat like an afterthought. I remember thinking even back then, at least the money is equal. I was wrong. If this story is starting to pull you in and make you wonder what comes next, feel free to take a moment to subscribe, but only if it truly resonates with you. I'd also love to know where you're listening from and what the weather is like there right now. Drop it in the comments. This is a fictional story, enhanced with the help of AI to add depth and emotion. Now, sit back, get comfortable, and let's continue. If there was one person in my life who made me feel like I wasn't invisible, it was my grandmother, Margaret Hale. She had spent over 40 years as a seamstress, running a small alteration shop out of her garage in a quiet neighborhood in Tacoma. By the time I knew her, her hands had started to stiffen, the fine movements slower than they used to be, but still precise in a way that felt almost magical. When she looked at you, she really looked like nothing else existed, like you were the only story worth hearing. No one else in my family ever did that. Not for me. Grandma Margaret was the one who taught me how to sketch, not the kind you learn in school, not shading exercises or perspective drills, but something more practical. She would lay out fabric patterns on her cutting table, pin them down carefully, and I would trace them freehand onto paper. Your hands and your mind. Lena, she used to say softly, no one can ever take those from you. She died in the spring when I was 16. Ovarian cancer. Fast. Merciless. My father didn't attend the funeral. He said he had a work obligation, which, in Daniel Ross language, meant he didn't believe his wife's mother was worth missing a meeting for. My mother stood beside the casket alone. I stood next to her. Ava didn't come either. She had a regional dance showcase that weekend, something she called too important to miss. A week before my grandmother passed, she pulled me close in her hospital room. Her voice was barely more than a whisper, but her grip was strong, stronger than I'd ever felt. I set something aside for you, she said. Not much, but it's yours. Only yours. A man named Thomas Keene will find you when the time is right. I thought she meant jewelry, or maybe one of her quilts. I was 16. I didn't know what a trust was. After the funeral, I found a small wooden box she had left for me. Inside was her sewing kit, a soft, worn measuring tape, and a folded piece of paper with a name and a phone number. Thomas Keene, attorney at law. I slipped the paper into my wallet, behind my student ID, and forgot about it. For 2 years. Then Ava came home from college during the fall of my senior year. She walked in like someone who had just discovered a new religion. Except her religion was ambition. And her God was success. She had been studying at Western State University for 3 years by then. Her grades were average at best. I only knew because I once overheard her arguing over the phone with an academic advisor late at night. But at the dinner table, that's not the story she told. According to Ava, she was building connections, developing her brand, setting the stage for something big. My father listened like every word was gospel. One Saturday morning in early March, Ava showed up wearing a fitted blazer I had never seen before. The tag was still attached inside the sleeve, like she wanted someone to notice. She carried a plastic binder, 8 or 9 pages, printed neatly, double-spaced. Her business plan. I was standing at the sink, washing breakfast dishes, when she sat down across from my father and began her pitch. She talked about an MBA, a top-tier program, then seed funding for a startup, something in digital consulting, though she never explained what that actually meant. She had run the numbers. She said confidently, total investment required, around $175,000. I turned off the faucet slowly, water dripping from my hands. Dad, Ava said, leaning back in her chair, crossing one leg over the other like she was already in a boardroom. Let's be realistic. You have 2 college funds sitting there. I need one of them. She paused just long enough. And Lena, what is she really going to do with it? She added casually. She draws. She said it the way you talk about something small, temporary, not cruel, not loud, just dismissive, like I wasn't even there, like I wasn't standing 10 feet away with water dripping from my hands. And my father, the same man who had stood at Thanksgiving and promised the entire family that both his daughters had equal futures waiting for them, looked down at Ava's neatly printed business plan and nodded. Slowly. You might be onto something, he said. He never looked at me. Not once. They didn't tell me right away. They waited a full week? I think it had less to do with consideration and more to do with getting everything signed. It was a Sunday morning when they finally did. The kitchen smelled like coffee and toasted bread, and the sunlight coming through the window was sharp and unforgiving, the kind of light that doesn't let anything hide. My father was already seated at the head of the table. Ava sat beside him, legs crossed, sipping from one of those oversized ceramic mugs he liked to buy. Expensive, decorative, pointless. The kind of thing he never hesitated to spend money on. Sit down. Lena, he said. I sat. He didn't soften his tone. He never did. I've made a decision about the education funds. Just like that. No lead-in. No explanation. Your sister needs the capital for her MBA. It's a real opportunity, and I'm not going to let it pass. He adjusted the napkin in front of him like he was finalizing paperwork. I'm consolidating both accounts under her name. Both. All of it. $175,000. Your sister has real potential. He continued calmly. You should consider learning a trade. There's good money in that. Nothing wrong with it. I turned to look at my mother. Karen was standing by the sink, both hands gripping the edge of the counter. Her body was angled away from me, her head lowered. She wasn't looking at my father. She wasn't looking at Ava. She wasn't looking at me. She was staring at the tile floor like she was trying to memorize every line in it. Mom, nothing. No response. No movement. Just the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the soft sound of Ava sipping her coffee like this was any other ordinary morning. Your mother agrees, my father said. And something inside me broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. Right there, on that kitchen floor. No funeral, no goodbye, just silence, and the faint smell of burnt toast in the air. I looked at my father, then at Ava, and I said one word, okay. I pushed my chair back, stood up, and walked upstairs. That single word cost me $175,000, but what I did in the next 48 hours was worth far more. I didn't leave that night. I know that's what people expect. A slammed door, a dramatic exit, tires screeching out of the driveway. That's not what happened. What happened was calculation. I had 2 final exams left, 2 days. If I walked out before graduation, I would lose the only thing I had left, my diploma. And without that, I wouldn't even qualify for community college. So I stayed. I sat in that small bedroom and did the most practical thing I had ever done in my life. I opened my laptop, searched for rooms to rent in Seattle, and started making a list. Monday morning, I took my English final. I aced it. Tuesday, art history, the easiest exam I had ever taken. Wednesday afternoon, I walked across the stage in a navy cap and gown, shook the principal's hand, and accepted my diploma. There was no one there for me. My father and mother were across the state visiting Ava's campus for some end-of-year event. A reception, a gathering, something important enough to miss their daughter's graduation. Ava didn't even graduate that year. They just didn't know it yet. I stepped out of the gymnasium into the bright June sunlight, and I didn't go home. I had already packed the night before. I had one backpack, 3 changes of clothes, my laptop, a phone charger, my grandmother's wooden sewing box, and the folded piece of paper with Thomas Keene's number, still tucked inside my wallet. That was everything I owned. My entire net worth was $340 sitting in a bank account tied to a debit card with a cracked screen. Before I left, I wrote a note and placed it on the kitchen table, the same table where my grandmother had once taught me how to trace patterns, the same table where my father had signed away my future like it was nothing. I'm leaving. Please don't look for me. You already made your choice. I called a rideshare, got into the back seat, and watched the neat white house on Alder Ridge Drive disappear behind me. $340, a high school diploma, a sewing box from a woman who believed in me, and a phone number I had never called. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Seattle in the summer is loud, restless, and completely indifferent to your problems. And when you're 18, running on anger and adrenaline, that kind of indifference feels like freedom. I found a room in a shared apartment in the Greenwood neighborhood, $800 a month, 1 bathroom, 2 roommates I had never met. One was a nursing student named Claire who worked night shifts and slept through most of the day. The other was a guy named Jordan who played guitar in a local band and treated mornings like a personal offense. No one asked why I was there. No one asked about my family. I liked that. Within a week, I found a job at a small coffee shop on Pine Street, minimum wage, plus tips if the morning crowd was generous. I signed up for classes at Seattle Central College for the fall, focusing on graphic design. The tuition was manageable, barely. If I picked up enough extra shifts, it took exactly 2 weeks before my father called. Not to check if I was safe, not to ask where I was living. To correct me, I didn't answer. So he left a voicemail. You're being dramatic. Lena, this is exactly the kind of behavior I was talking about. Come home. We'll figure something realistic out for you. Realistic? Like shrinking my life to fit his expectations. He left 3 more messages that month, each one shorter, each one sharper. My mother called once, late at night. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper, which meant my father was nearby. Lena, sweetheart, I'm worried about you, she said. Your father, he just wants what's best. Please come home. We can work this out. Work what out? Mom, I asked. He gave away my money. There was silence. Then softly, your father knows what he's doing. Just come home. I ended the call, and in that moment, something became painfully clear. My mother was never going to choose me, not because she didn't care, but because she had spent her entire life letting my father decide everything. And she didn't know how to stop. That was the night I deleted home from my contacts. Ava, on the other hand, didn't bother calling. She sent a message in the family group chat I hadn't left yet. 1 sentence, 1 laughing emoji. Guess the artist couldn't handle the real world. I took a screenshot, muted the chat, closed it. That same week, she posted a photo on Instagram, a rooftop bar, city lights behind her, a bottle of something expensive on the table, captioned, MBA Life, every cent earned, from my $175,000. I stared at it for a few seconds. Then I closed the app and opened my textbook. 3 months in, I was surviving on 4 hours of sleep, cheap coffee, and a kind of stubbornness I didn't even realize I had, the kind you inherit from someone who worked with her hands until they gave out, and still kept going. One night, I was sitting on the lower bunk in my room, digging through my bag looking for a pen, when my fingers brushed against the wooden box, my grandmother's sewing kit. I opened it slowly, carefully, like I already knew it was going to matter. The measuring tape, the needles, the faint smell of fabric and time, and underneath it all, the folded piece of paper. Thomas Keene, attorney at law, a phone number. I had carried it with me for 2 years. Never called. It always felt like something for later, for some undefined moment in the future. But sitting there, with $214 left in my account and a tuition bill due in 6 weeks, I realized this was that moment. I called the next morning. He picked up on the second ring. His voice was calm, steady. The kind of voice that comes from decades of explaining difficult things to people on their worst days. He told me he had been trying to reach me. He had sent 2 letters to my parents' house over the past 2 years. I never received them. There was a pause on the line. Not awkward, not confused, just understanding. I see, he said. We both knew what that meant. My father had never intended for those letters to reach me. Thomas asked me to come to his office in Bellevue. I took a bus across the city. Then another one, sitting by the window with my backpack on my lap and that same piece of paper folded neatly inside my wallet. His office was small, just him and a paralegal. A quiet brick building with shelves lined with legal books and a brass desk lamp that looked older than anything I owned. He sat me down and began to explain. 4 years before she passed, my grandmother had set up a revocable trust, $12,000, every dollar from her own savings. I was the sole beneficiary, Lena Margaret Ross. The trust was designed to transfer to me when I turned 18 and contacted the trustee. Thomas Keene was that trustee. She told me you would call one day, he said gently. She just didn't know when. Then he slid a check across the desk. $12,000. Next to it was a copy of the trust document. At the bottom was my grandmother's signature. Thin, slightly unsteady, but unmistakably hers. Every letter written with intention. I held that paper in my hands, and for the first time since I left home, I cried. Not because of the money, because someone had thought of me. Someone had planned for me. Someone had made sure that, no matter what happened, I would have something that was mine and no one else's. But Thomas wasn't finished. There's something else you should see, he said. He opened a folder and turned it toward me. Your custodial account, the one with $175,000. I requested the transaction records. As the beneficiary, you have a right to them. Inside the folder was a printed email from my father, dated March 18th, 4 sentences long, an instruction to withdraw the full amount from my account and transfer it into a new account under Ava's name. There was no explanation, no mention of my education, no mention of me at all, just numbers, just instructions. Cold, clean, final. Under Washington law, Thomas explained, a custodial account like mine came with a legal obligation. A custodian has a fiduciary duty to act in the best interest of the minor. He said, that's you. What your father did isn't just unfair. Lena, it's a violation of that duty. My chest tightened. So I can get it back, I asked quietly. He didn't sugarcoat it. You can file a claim, but your father would need to have the assets to return, and legal action takes time and money. I can't promise you an outcome. I sat there for a long time, staring at that piece of paper, my father's name, the date, the amount. It didn't look like betrayal. It looked like paperwork, like moving funds from one place to another. And then, slowly, I folded the document and placed it back into the folder with the check. "I'm not going to sue him," I said. Thomas raised an eyebrow slightly. "I don't want his money," I continued. "I want mine." He nodded. Slowly, not in agreement. "In respect? The statute of limitations is 6 years," he said. "If you change your mind, you still have time." I thanked him. I took the check, the documents, and the envelope, and stepped back out into the gray Seattle rain. I stood at the bus stop, holding that envelope tightly against my chest. $12,000. In this city. That wasn't much. A few months of rent, some tuition, but it was the first money I had ever received because someone believed in me. Not because they were obligated to, because they chose to. I want to be honest about what came next, because people like to imagine a clean story, a montage, late nights, hard work, success rising steadily. That's not what it looked like. It was messy. It was exhausting. There were weeks where the only thing keeping me going was the fear that my father might have been right about me. I used the money carefully. Tuition at Seattle Central for a full year cost just under $4,000. I bought a refurbished iMac, a student subscription to design software. The rest. I stretched. Rent, bus fare, groceries, electric bills when one of my roommates forgot to pay their share. I treated every dollar like it mattered. Because it did. 2 years later, I graduated at the top of my graphic design program, a 3.94 GPA. That earned me a transfer scholarship to the University of Washington. Not full coverage, but enough to make it possible. I worked part-time on campus, picked up freelance design jobs online, logos for small businesses, brand kits for startups. $10 an hour sometimes. Less than that. Occasionally, but it was mine. During my first semester there, I walked into an interview for a design internship and met someone who would change everything. Her name was Rebecca Cole. She was the creative director of a small interior design studio in downtown Seattle, about 40 years old, always had reading glasses resting on top of her head, and she said exactly what she thought. In a world full of people like my father, that felt like oxygen. She flipped through my portfolio without saying a word. Page after page, sketches, layouts, concepts I had stayed up until 2 a.m. perfecting. It felt like 10 minutes, maybe more. Then she looked up at me. "Who trained you?" "My grandmother. And YouTube," I said. For a second, something almost like a smile crossed her face. "Your spatial instincts are unpolished," she said. "But they're rare, and they're real. I don't say that often." Then she closed the folder. "I want you here. 20 hours a week. $12 an hour. You start Monday." I said yes before she finished the sentence. And somewhere else in the state, my sister Ava, funded by my $175,000, was living a completely different version of potential. I didn't follow her life anymore, not intentionally, but things still found their way to me. Claire followed someone who followed someone. Photos surfaced, stories circulated. Ava had dropped out of her MBA program after 1 year. Just quit. She took what was left of the money and pivoted into a startup. Something vague and impressive sounding. Digital consulting, branding, strategy. From what I could tell, it mostly involved a rented desk in a shared workspace and a LinkedIn page full of words that didn't mean anything. She leased a BMW, moved into a high-rise apartment downtown, posted photos from rooftop bars with captions like "building something bigger than myself." My father repeated it to anyone who would listen. "My daughter is an entrepreneur in Seattle, according to Aunt Melissa, Who was the only person from that side of the family who still spoke to me? No one ever asked about me, not once. Rebecca said something to me at the end of my first month at the studio. We had just finished a client presentation. The room still smelled like fabric samples and fresh printouts. I was rolling up blueprints, stacking materials, trying to keep up. She stopped what she was doing and looked at me. Really looked at me. The same way my grandmother used to. "I don't know what you're running from, Lena," she said quietly. "But whatever it is, keep running." She paused. "You're going somewhere." She didn't know my story, but she understood enough. I want to pause for a moment. If you're listening to this, and you've ever been the one your family overlooked, the one they dismissed, the one they quietly decided wasn't worth investing in, I see you. And if this story feels a little too familiar, take a moment to subscribe. Not for me, for the version of you that needs to hear what comes next, because what happened in year 3 changed everything. By the start of that year, I had something I had never had before. A life that was mine. I was 21, a full-time student at the University of Washington, taking a heavy course load while still working 20 hours a week at Rebecca's studio. My apartment was small, about 400 square feet in an older building near Capitol Hill. Nothing impressive, but it had one window facing east, and every morning, the light would hit my drafting table just right. The walls were covered in mood boards, color palettes, scraps of ideas that hadn't fully formed yet. It looked like someone was building something. Because I was. That's when my father decided he needed me back. Not because he missed me, not because he regretted anything, because people had started asking questions. Our old neighbors, the Whitmans, had known our family for over a decade. "Where's Lena these days? Haven't seen her around? Is she doing okay?" My father didn't tolerate questions he couldn't control. And a missing daughter was a crack in the image he had spent years constructing. The call came through my mother. Of course it did. Her voice was soft, practiced. "Your father would like you to come home for Thanksgiving," she said. "The Whitmans will be there, and some of your father's colleagues. It would mean a lot." I understood the translation immediately. "Your absence is becoming noticeable. I appreciate the invitation." "Mom," I said, "but I have plans." There was a pause, a slight shuffle. Then my father's voice cut in, sharp and immediate. He had been listening the entire time. "You're embarrassing this family. Lena," he said, "people are asking where you are. What am I supposed to tell them?" And there it was. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "How have you been?" Just, "What do I tell people?" "Tell them the truth," I said. "Don't be smart with me. I'm not coming back to stand in a room and pretend everything's fine." I replied. "You made your decision 2 years ago. I made mine." He hung up. Just like that. The line went dead. I stood there in my apartment, phone still pressed to my ear, heart pounding. Not from fear, from something else. For the first time in my life, I had said no to him, and nothing collapsed. The sky didn't fall. The world didn't end. But my father wasn't finished. Within a week, he started rewriting the story. He sent out a group email to the entire extended family. Subject line: family update. I know exactly what it said, because Aunt Melissa forwarded it to me without a single comment. Her way of saying, "You should see this." It read, "Dear family, Karen and I want to address Lena's situation. As some of you may have noticed, Lena has chosen to distance herself from the family. We have made every effort to support her and keep the door open, but she has refused. She is going through a difficult period and has, frankly, some personal issues we would rather not discuss in detail. We ask for your understanding and your prayers during this time. Personal issues. That's what he called it. Not I took her college fund. Not I told her to give up her future while I funded her sister's lifestyle. Personal issues. The kind of vague, carefully chosen phrase that lets people imagine whatever version of the story makes the speaker look better. Drugs, a breakdown, bad decisions. Pick one. The messages started coming in within days. My cousin Danielle texted me, "Thinking of you. Stay strong." My uncle left a voicemail about faith and forgiveness. And Aunt Melissa, the only one who ever bothered to question anything, called me directly. "Lena, honey, are you okay? Your father says you're struggling." I closed my eyes for a moment before answering. "Aunt Melissa, I love you," I said, "but ask him what happened to my college fund, and then decide who's struggling." She didn't respond right away. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. The kind of silence that happens when someone realizes the story they were told might not be true. She asked him. I know she did. Later, she told me his response. "That's between me and my daughters." Which is what people say when the truth doesn't work in their favor. After that, she stopped asking. Not because she didn't care, but because my father had spent years building a system where questioning him felt like betrayal. And most people choose comfort over confrontation. I didn't have the energy to fight that. I was 21, working, studying, barely keeping everything together. I couldn't run a campaign to defend my name while trying to build a life from nothing. So I did what I had always done. I kept my head down, and I kept moving forward. But I saved that email. I saved the forwarded message from Aunt Melissa. With the timestamp and every recipient listed. I didn't know when I would need it. I just knew I would. Because people who rewrite the past once will do it again. And next time. I wanted proof. 8 months after that Thanksgiving call, Ava reached out. It was a Thursday night. The first time I had heard her voice in over 2 years. "Hey, Lena." Her tone was casual, warm, like nothing had ever happened, like we were just sisters catching up. "Ava, Dad told me about the whole Thanksgiving thing." She said, "I think you're overreacting a little." I didn't say anything. "It was just money," she continued. "We're family. Families work things out. Just money. $175,000. My education. My future. My grandmother's final gift to me. Just money." "It was my money." "Ava," I said quietly. "Well, technically. Sure," she replied. "But Dad made the call he thought was best. And honestly," she paused. I could hear her shifting, like she was getting comfortable, settling deeper into whatever version of her life she had built. I needed it more. There it was. Simple. Clean. Justified. "You always land on your feet. Lena," she added. "You're resilient." Resilient. The word people use when they want to admire your survival, without acknowledging they caused it. I didn't respond. I let the silence stretch. Long enough to make her uncomfortable. Her tone changed. The warmth disappeared. "Fine," she said. "But let me be clear. If you keep dragging this out, if you start making Dad look bad over some account, I'll make sure people know why you really left." I felt something in my chest go still. "I'll tell them you couldn't handle not being the favorite," she continued. "I'll make sure that version sticks." And just like that, there she was. Not the confident entrepreneur, not the golden child. Just the same person who had sat at that kitchen table and dismissed my entire future with one sentence. I spoke slowly, calmly. "Ava," I said, "I'm only going to say this once." There was a pause. "Don't call me again, unless it's to apologize with a check." I took a breath. And even then, call a lawyer first. I hung up. My hand was shaking. My voice hadn't been. That was the last time I spoke to my sister. For 2 years and 4 months. Until the day she walked into my office. With my parents. There's something people don't tell you about starting over from nothing. It doesn't stay in the past. It follows you. Quietly. Waiting for the moment you finally think you've moved on. By the end of my 3rd year, I had been moving nonstop for nearly 30 months. Classes, work at the studio, freelance projects on weekends. A budget so tight I could feel it every time I bought groceries. And then, in the span of a single week, everything cracked. The first hit came from my biggest freelance client, a boutique hotel group I had been doing branding work for. They froze their entire marketing budget. Contract terminated. Effective immediately. Just like that. $1,400 a month disappeared. The second hit came 2 days later. My tuition bill for my final semester arrived. $4,200 due in 30 days. My scholarship covered the rest. But this part was mine. And my bank account had exactly $611. That night, I sat in Rebecca's old Civic in the parking lot of a pharmacy, the dashboard light dim and steady, and did the math on the back of a receipt. Again and again. Every version ended the same way. Short. If I couldn't pay, I would lose my final semester. No degree. 3 years of work reduced to nothing more than an unfinished record. And for the first time since I walked out of that kitchen, for the first time in almost 3 years, I heard my father's voice again, not as a memory, as a judgment. Maybe he was right. Maybe I wasn't built for this. Maybe the girl who draws pictures didn't have real potential. Maybe I should have gone back, accepted the smaller life he had planned for me, learned something practical, married someone appropriate, smiled at dinner parties and hosted holidays until I slowly turned into my mother. I picked up my phone, opened my contacts, scrolled to where home used to be. I still remembered the number. My thumb hovered over the screen. Then I looked at the passenger seat. The wooden box was there. I always kept it with me. My grandmother's sewing kit, the measuring tape, the quiet reminder. Your hands and your mind. Lena, no one can take those from you. I exhaled slowly and put the phone down. I didn't call them. I called someone else. Rebecca answered on the first ring. It was almost midnight. But she picked up like she had been expecting it. She had noticed the weight I had lost, the circles under my eyes. She never said anything directly, but she saw everything. I'm sorry to call so late. I said, I wanted to ask if you had any extra projects. Anything. I'll take whatever you have. I chose my words carefully. I didn't say I needed money. I didn't ask for help. I asked for work. There's a difference. And it matters. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I was actually planning to talk to you. My chest tightened. I'm leaving the firm. For a second. Everything inside me dropped. The one stable thing in my life. Gone. I'm starting my own studio. She continued. Residential and commercial design. I've been planning it for months. And I need someone full-time. I didn't speak. I need a junior designer. She said, salary. Enough to cover your expenses. Enough to finish your degree. If that's what you're worried about. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel and closed my eyes. Not because I was falling apart. Because for the first time in 3 years, the numbers finally worked. Why me? I asked quietly. Because I saw your latest portfolio update. She said. That hotel lobby concept, Lena. That's not junior work. That's lead designer work. She paused. You just don't see it yet. She didn't save me. She hired me. She made a decision based on what I had built. I started the following Monday. Design work during the day, classes 3 nights a week, studio work on Saturdays, sleep when I could get it. It was the hardest year of my life, and the year everything changed. In late October of year 4, I got a call from Aunt Melissa. I was sitting at my drafting table, sketching out elevations for a restaurant project, when my phone buzzed. She had a way of delivering news. Calm, measured, like she was reading a weather report. Ava moved back home, she said. I stopped drawing, set my pencil down slowly. She failed. Aunt Melissa continued quietly. Whatever that business was, it didn't work. I never really understood what she was doing in the first place. It's over. I said nothing. The car was repossessed last month. She added, she's back in her old room at the house. I waited for a feeling to come. Satisfaction, relief, vindication, something. But it didn't. What I felt instead was hollow. The kind of emptiness that comes when something you always knew would happen finally does. And you realize part of you had hoped you were wrong. And your father? She sighed softly. He refinanced the house, pulled from his retirement, put another 30, maybe 40,000 into Ava to try to help her recover. I closed my eyes for a moment. My mom, I asked. She's working now. Aunt Melissa said, cashier at a grocery store on Maple Avenue. First job she's had in decades. I pictured it without meaning to. My mother, standing behind a register, scanning items, smiling politely at strangers, at 51 years old, because my father had poured everything into one child who couldn't hold on to anything. Does he ever talk about me? I asked. I didn't even know why I asked. Maybe some part of me was still that girl at the kitchen table, waiting to be seen. There was a pause. No, honey, she said gently. He tells people Ava is regrouping, that things will turn around. She hesitated. He doesn't mention you. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Then I picked up my pencil again and went back to work. While my father was watching his investment collapse, I was signing my first lease. Not for an apartment, for an office. I graduated from the University of Washington on a bright afternoon in May. Bachelor of Fine Arts in Design. Magna cum laude. The auditorium was full. Families everywhere. Flowers. Cameras. Laughter. My row had 2 reserved seats with my last name on them, both empty. Rebecca sat in the 3rd row, navy blazer, glasses resting on her head, and when they called my name, Lena Margaret Ross, she stood up and clapped, loud enough to fill the space my family had left behind. That was enough. 6 months later, everything changed again. Rebecca and I had been building toward it for a while. Her client list was growing faster than she could manage alone, and my work had started bringing in its own clients. One evening, after everyone else had left the studio, she sat me down. I want your name on the door, she said. Just like that. Cole and Ross Design Studio. She had already drafted the partnership agreement. 51% her, 49% me. Fair. She brought the capital, the reputation, the foundation. I brought the work, the clients, and every dollar I had managed to save. $8,000, 18 months of careful budgeting. We signed the papers on a Tuesday. Within 6 months, we outgrew the space. 3 employees became 7. 7 became 12. Rebecca handled the high-end residential clients. I built something else. Corporate spaces, restaurant concepts, boutique hotel branding. We called it Ross Creative Consulting. It grew faster than I expected. The day I saw my last name etched onto a glass door that I owned, Not borrowed, not inherited, not given. I stood there for 5 full minutes, not admiring it, trying to believe it. By year 5, I was 23, and my life looked nothing like what anyone in that house had imagined for me. We moved into a new building in downtown Seattle, an older tower, fully renovated, the kind of address that made people take you seriously before you even spoke. We took over an entire floor, 40 employees, glass offices, a design lab, a presentation room with a long walnut table that could seat 12 clients at once. Our revenue had tripled in less than 2 years. We had contracts with hotel groups across the West Coast, restaurant chains, corporate offices. My office sat in the corner, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. On my desk, there were only 2 things that mattered: a framed photo of my grandmother and her wooden sewing box. The lid always open, the measuring tape still curled inside. No other family photos, not a single one. In early January, I received an email that I almost deleted without opening. It was from Seattle Business Review. They were announcing their annual 30 Under 30 list, a recognition of young professionals making an impact across the state. I had been nominated. The ceremony was scheduled for March, a formal event downtown, hundreds of attendees, media coverage, the kind of recognition my father would have built an entire narrative around. I read the email 3 times. Then I called Rebecca. "You deserve this," she said immediately. "Don't overthink it, and don't you dare turn it down." So I didn't. I accepted, sent back the RSVP, and started writing my speech. I planned to thank Rebecca, my professors, and the woman who gave me $12,000 and the first real belief I ever had in myself. What I didn't plan for, what I couldn't have predicted, was what happened next. 2 weeks before the event, the publication released all nominee profiles online: photos, names, full bios, everything. And Seattle isn't as big as people think. It was Ryan Whitman who saw it first. Our old neighbor's son, the kid who used to play in the driveway across from our house. He had moved back to the city after college and was working in commercial real estate. He saw the article the day it went live, saw the name, saw the photo, a clean professional headshot, blazer, neutral background, the kind of image my father would have framed in the living room if it had been Ava. Ryan didn't hesitate. He sent the link to his mother with a simple message: "Isn't this the Ross's daughter, Small World?" That same evening, Mrs. Whitman texted my father. "Congratulations, Daniel. I just saw Lena featured in Seattle Business Review. What an incredible achievement. You must be so proud." I didn't hear about what happened next until much later. Aunt Melissa told me. She pieced it together from things my mother had said. My father opened the article on the tablet he kept in the kitchen. He read it in silence. The profile laid everything out. Co-founder of Cole and Ross Design Studio, 40 employees, major clients, rapid growth, the nomination. There was even a quote from Rebecca, one of the most naturally gifted spatial designers I've worked with in over 20 years. My father didn't smile, didn't react, didn't say he was proud. He looked at the screen, then at my mother, and said, "She got lucky. Design isn't stable, it won't last." But this time, my mother didn't agree. For the first time in decades, she didn't nod. She built that without us. She said quietly. He didn't answer. He set the tablet down and walked out of the room. Ava was upstairs, still living in her old bedroom, 26 years old, surrounded by unpaid bills, rejection emails, and a credit card balance she couldn't manage. She saw the article later that night, read it once, then again. Then she went downstairs, and said the only honest thing she had probably said in years. We should go see her. Maybe she can help. My father's first reaction was immediate. No. The idea alone offended him. In his world, children didn't rise above their parents, and they certainly didn't become the ones being approached for help. But Ava understood something he didn't. Think about it, she said. If people find out your daughter is this successful, and you're not even in her life. She let the sentence hang. That looks worse. Worse than anything I could ever say. She was right. And they both knew it. This wasn't about reconnecting. It wasn't about regret. It was about appearances. My father needed to be seen as the head of a family that included a successful daughter, not the man whose daughter succeeded without him. So they made a decision. They would come to me. No call, no warning. Just show up, walk into my office, shake hands, maybe take a photo. Something he could point to later. Proof that everything was still intact, that nothing had really broken. They left early on a Tuesday morning in March. My father wore his best suit. Navy, slightly outdated, too tight across the shoulders now. Ava sat in the front seat, dressed like she had somewhere important to be, even though she didn't. My mother sat in the back, holding her purse tightly in both hands, eyes already red before they had even left the neighborhood. 3 people. And a quiet understanding that they were walking into something they didn't control. That same morning, I was already at the office by 8. The floor was still quiet, just the low hum of the building systems and the soft gray light filtering through the windows. I had my speech open on my laptop. The ceremony was 4 days away. I had rewritten the middle section more times than I could count, the part about my grandmother. I want to thank the woman who gave me my first investment, $12,000 in a wooden box, and taught me that potential isn't something someone else decides for you. That part was clear, solid, true. It was the next part that kept catching me. How much to say? How close to the truth I wanted to get, without letting it become about him. I took a sip of coffee. Black. Always black. My blazer hung neatly over the back of my chair. White linen. The nicest thing I owned. Bought with my own money. The small gold earrings my grandmother gave me rested against my skin. The only piece of jewelry I wore to work. I stood for a moment and looked out the window. The city stretched out below me. Glass, steel, movement. A place that had never promised me anything, and still gave me everything I had built. I hadn't thought about my father in weeks. And that, more than anything, felt like victory. Not the office, not the company, not the title. The fact that he no longer lived in my head. Not for free. Then the intercom buzzed. Miss Ross. It was Olivia at the front desk. Her voice was careful, unusual. There are 3 people in the lobby. They don't have an appointment. Olivia continued. They said, their family. My hand stopped moving. 5 years. No calls, no letters, no apology. And now they were standing in my lobby like they belonged there. I felt it immediately. That cold, sharp stillness that spreads through your body when something from your past walks into your present without permission. If you've ever had that moment, you know exactly what it feels like. I sat there for a few seconds. Quiet, my fingers resting on the edge of my laptop. The soft blinking light on the phone. I could have said no. I could have told Olivia to let them wait. Or to tell them I was busy, unavailable, gone. A part of me wanted to. The part of me that was still 18, still standing in that kitchen, still trying to understand how everything had been taken so easily. But I wasn't that girl anymore. The version of me sitting in that office knew something she didn't. Avoiding them would give them control. Facing them, On my terms. Would take it back. Send them up, I said. I adjusted my blazer, pulled my chair in, opened a blank document on my laptop so my speech wasn't visible, and waited. A few moments later, I heard the elevator, a soft chime. I didn't go out to greet them. I stayed exactly where I was. Through the glass walls, I could see them enter. Olivia guided them past the reception desk, past the brushed metal logo mounted against the dark wall, Cole and Ross, past the open workspace where dozens of employees were already at their desks. Screens glowing, conversations low, work moving forward. The room felt alive, structured, certain. My father walked in first. Same suit. Older now. Tighter. The fabric pulling at the seams. His shoes were polished. He had made an effort. Behind him, Ava, wrinkled pants, a faded blouse, her posture slightly smaller than I remembered. And behind her, my mother, holding her bag tightly with both hands, her eyes already filled with something she hadn't yet said. They moved through a space they didn't understand. A space that existed because I had chosen to build something instead of going back. Olivia opened the conference room door. Glass walls, a long walnut table, clean lines, a skyline view that stretched across the city. Ms. Ross will be with you shortly, she said. I waited 2 minutes, not to make a point, to steady myself. Then I stood, picked up a notepad, a pen, and walked in. My mother saw me first. She made a sound. Not quite a word, not quite a cry. Something in between. Her knees gave out. Actually gave out. She caught herself on the edge of the table, gripping it tightly. My father reached for her, steadying her, but his face. I will never forget that expression. It wasn't anger. It wasn't disappointment. It was something else. The look of a man who had walked into a room expecting to find something small, and realized he had misjudged it entirely. Ava didn't speak. She just stared. At the room. At the table. At me. Like she was trying to reconcile what she was seeing with what she thought she knew. I met their eyes calmly, the same way I would greet any unexpected visitor. Professional, neutral, distant. Please, I said. Have a seat. They sat. My father instinctively moved to the head of the table, then paused. Something in him registering that this was no longer his place. He shifted slightly to the side. My mother chose the chair closest to the door, like she needed an exit. Ava sat between them, arms crossed, eyes moving slowly across the room, taking everything in, and I remained standing for just a moment longer, before taking my seat across from them. No one touched the coffee. Of course. My father spoke first. You've done well for yourself. Lena. He gave a slow nod. Measured. Evaluating. The same nod he used to give Ava when she brought home report cards he approved of, like he was assessing me, grading the outcome. I always said you were capable. He added, capable. Not talented. Not exceptional. Just capable. The kind of word you use when someone succeeds despite the expectations you set for them. I let the silence stretch. 1 second, 2, 3. Long enough for it to settle into the room. Thank you, I said calmly. How can I help you today? He blinked. Just slightly. He had expected something else. Warmth. Emotion. Gratitude. Maybe. Instead, he got a conference room and a question that required an actual answer. We're here because we're family, he said, leaning forward, adjusting his cuffs like he was about to lead a meeting. It's been too long. Your mother and I think it's time we reconnect. Move forward. My mother nodded quickly, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue she had already pulled from her bag. I placed my pen gently on the notepad in front of me. I appreciate you coming. That was all I said. Then Ava cleared her throat. She leaned forward, placing her elbows on the table, her tone shifting into something softer, familiar, carefully practiced. Lena, I was actually hoping you could help me with something. I looked at her. Business advice. She continued. I've got a few ideas I'm working on, and I thought maybe you could take a look. Give me your perspective. A few ideas. I knew exactly what that meant. Debt, failed plans, starting over, again. I studied her for a moment, the same way Rebecca used to study my work, looking for structure, for substance, for something that held up under pressure. Ava, I said evenly. Are you here as a client? She frowned. What? If you're looking for professional consultation, I can have Olivia schedule something. Our current rate is $350 an hour. The room went still, completely still. My father's expression tightened. There was a familiar shift in his jaw, a small movement near his temple. I had seen it before, the moment right before he lost control. I reached into my folder and placed a business card on the table between us. Lena Ross, co-founder, Cole and Ross Design Studio, contact details, nothing else, no shared history, no family connection, just facts. He looked down at it, didn't touch it. I'm happy to help. I continued, but I need to understand something first. I met his eyes directly. Are you here as my family, or as a business inquiry? The words hung there, clear, unavoidable. Because if it's family, I added, we haven't spoken in 5 years. Something shifted in the room. Not subtle, not quiet. My father pushed his chair back slightly, both hands pressing against the table, and for the first time since they had walked in, the control slipped. Enough with the corporate tone. Lena, my father snapped, we're your parents. We drove 2 hours to see you. You drove 2 hours. I replied evenly, that's more effort than you made in 5 years. His face flushed instantly. That same vein pulsed at his temple. I made a decision for this family, he said, his voice tightening. I did what I thought was right. I looked at both my daughters and I put the money where it had the best chance of success. He gestured toward me. And look at you. You moved on? You're doing fine. Fine. Like it had been a minor inconvenience. Like $175,000 was something you misplaced and forgot about. Like it hadn't been my future. You took $175,000 that had my name on it. I said. My voice was steady. I had rehearsed that sentence more times than I could count. Not for him. For myself. You transferred it to Ava without my consent. That wasn't a family decision. I held his gaze. That was a legal violation of your fiduciary duty. Silence. Thick. Heavy. I chose not to sue you. I continued. That doesn't mean I forgot. The color drained from his face. Not red anymore. White. The look of someone who just realized the person they underestimated. Understood everything. How? He started. I had a lawyer explain it to me. I said. The same lawyer Grandma appointed to manage the trust she set up in my name. I paused. The one whose letters you never let me see. My mother turned sharply toward him. What letters, she whispered? He didn't answer. Ava leaned forward slightly, her posture shifting. The confidence was gone, replaced with something rawer, something familiar. Desperation. Lena. Listen, she said quickly. I'm in a tough spot right now. Okay, I've got about $60,000 in debt, mostly credit cards. If you could just help me out a little, just something to get me through. No. The word landed cleanly. No hesitation, no space for negotiation. She blinked. "Come on," she said, her voice cracking slightly. "We're family. Family didn't stop you from taking my future." I said, "And it won't make me fund yours." She looked at my father instinctively, the way she always had, waiting for him to step in, to fix it, to take her side. But he wasn't looking at her. He was staring down at the table, processing, replaying the words I had just used. Fiduciary duty, lawyer, letters, things he had never expected me to understand. And then my mother broke. Not the quiet kind, not the silent tears at the kitchen sink. This was different. "Tina," she started, her voice shaking. "I'm sorry. I should have said something. I was there. I saw what happened and I was afraid. I didn't know how to stop it." I looked at her, really looked at her. "I know you were afraid," I said softly. Not harsh, not forgiving, just true. "But you were the adult. I was 18. I let that sit. I needed one person in that house to stand up for me." I held her eyes. Just one. Her hands came up to cover her mouth as she started to cry, deep, uncontrolled. The kind of grief that doesn't make sound at first. My father said nothing. Ava said nothing. And in that silence, I reached into my folder, the one I had kept all these years, the one I had never thrown away. I pulled out a single sheet of paper and placed it in front of him. His email, dated 5 years ago, a direct instruction to transfer $175,000 from my account into Ava's. 4 sentences. No explanation. No mention of me. No mention of my education. Just numbers. And a decision. "This," I said quietly, "is what you gave me." I tapped the paper once. "A transaction?" I met his eyes again. "Everything else?" "I built myself." He stared at it. His hand moved slightly toward the paper, then stopped. Because he already knew exactly what it was. He didn't reach for the paper. He didn't need to. He already knew what it was. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see a few of my team members glancing over. Subtle, careful, trying not to be obvious. Olivia sat at her desk, eyes flicking toward the door every few seconds while pretending to focus on her screen. 40 people on this floor. Not one of them knew the 3 sitting across from me. That was the difference. My family had no authority here, no influence, no control, not in this building, not at this table. My father wasn't the kind of man who raised his voice in public. He saved that for private spaces, for kitchens, for rooms where he could control the outcome. So he sat there instead, in a suit that no longer fit, in a place that wasn't his, staring at a piece of paper that said everything he didn't want said, and for the first time in his life, he had nothing to add. I stood up, calmly, not rushed, not dramatic. The way you stand when a meeting is over and everyone in the room understands it without being told. "I'm going to be honest with all of you," I said. "I don't hate you." They didn't react. Hating you would mean you still have control over how I feel. I let that settle. "You don't." My father kept his eyes on the table. Ava was picking at the edge of her sleeve. My mother had stopped crying, but her breathing was uneven, her hands still clutching the tissue tightly. "I'm not going to give Ava money," I continued. "I'm not going to pretend we're a happy family for anyone, and I'm not going to accept a version of this story where everything that happened was justified." Silence filled the space again. "If there is ever going to be a relationship between us," I said, "it starts with 3 things." I held their attention. A real apology, not one that shifts blame. Accountability for what was taken from me, not explained away, not minimized, and respect for who I became. Without you. I picked up my notepad, my pen. Until then, I said, Olivia will walk you out. My father stood first. His jaw tightened, like he was holding back words he couldn't use. He looked around the room, at the glass walls, at the people working just beyond them, at the name on the wall outside, at everything that existed without him. He didn't apologize. He buttoned his jacket incorrectly, not noticing. Then he turned and walked toward the door. Ava followed. Quiet now. No confidence, no argument, just movement. My mother stood last. Slowly, she steadied herself on the back of the chair before turning toward me. And for a moment, she looked at me differently. Not as a child, not as someone to manage, but as someone she was seeing clearly for the first time. Your grandmother, she said softly. Her voice still fragile. She would be proud of you. Something shifted inside me, not enough to undo anything, but enough to feel. I know, I said, and that was all. Olivia held the conference room door open. The moment it swung wide, the sound of the office rushed back in, keyboards clicking, phones ringing, a quiet burst of laughter near the coffee station, the steady rhythm of work. My work. My father walked out first. His posture had changed, subtly. His shoulders pulled in, like he was trying to take up less space than he used to. That navy suit, too tight now, moved through rows of desks, screens, and people who didn't even glance up. Not because they were being disrespectful, because he didn't matter here. He passed through a place where his name carried no weight, where his decisions meant nothing. Ava followed behind him, quieter than I had ever seen her. My mother came last. At the elevator, she hesitated for just a second. Then she turned, looked down the hallway, toward my office. But I was already walking away, back to my desk. The doors closed. And for the first time in 5 years, I let myself think it. I won. Not because of money, not because of titles, not because of the office or the company or the name on the wall. I won because I built something of my own, and the people who once decided my future had just walked out of it with nothing. After they left, I stayed in the conference room for a while. The paper was still on the table. 4 sentences, 5 years old, printed on plain white paper. I picked it up, folded it along the same crease it had always had, and slid it back into the folder. There's something I didn't say in that room, something I've only ever told Rebecca and Thomas Keene. I could have sued my father. I still can. By the time I was 21, the case was already there, clear, documented, a custodial account, a fiduciary duty, $175,000 withdrawn and transferred to someone else, for reasons that had nothing to do with me. Under the law, it wasn't complicated. It wasn't even ambiguous. A judge could have ordered everything returned, plus interest, plus legal fees. Thomas had everything: the transaction records, the emails, the proof. You have a strong case. He told me. I believed him. I sat with that decision for months. Then I said no. Not because I forgave my father, and not because the money didn't matter. There were 3 reasons. The first was simple. He didn't have it anymore. His savings were gone. The house was leveraged. Everything had already been poured into Ava and burned through. Winning a judgment against someone with nothing left is just paper. The second reason was time. I didn't want to spend years in courtrooms, explaining, revisiting, reliving, turning the worst moment of my life into something public, something dissected, something argued over by people who weren't there. I had already lived through it once. I wasn't going to live through it again. just to prove a point. The third reason mattered more than anything else. I didn't want to become the kind of person who built her life around $175,000. I wanted to be the person who built her life without it. Keep the file, I told Thomas. The statute runs 6 years. If he ever tries to rewrite this story publicly, I want proof. He nodded. He understood. The folder went into my desk drawer, not as a weapon, as insurance, at some point. The money stopped being about money. It became about identity, about the kind of person I was going to choose to be. And I chose to be someone who didn't need it. Saturday arrived faster than I expected. The ballroom at the convention center was filled with light, tall windows, crystal chandeliers, tables dressed in white and gold, hundreds of people, sharp suits, elegant dresses, conversations layered with ambition and expectation. There was a backdrop set up for photos. The 30 Under 30 logo repeated across it. People lined up, smiling, posing, capturing moments they had worked years for. I stood there in a midnight blue blazer, tailored, fitted, the nicest thing I had ever owned. My grandmother's earrings rested against my ears, small gold knots, simple, steady. I had practiced walking in those heels for a week, not because anyone would notice if I stumbled, because I would. Inside my blazer pocket, there was a folded piece of paper, worn soft at the edges. A name, a number, Thomas Keene. I had carried it for years, not as luck, as a reminder of someone who believed in me before I knew how to believe in myself. Rebecca sat at the front table, proud, calm. She had brought a few members of our team with her. Olivia was there too, dressed differently than I had ever seen her, all of them watching, all of them part of what I had built. They called my name at 8:47, Lena Ross, co-founder of Cole and Ross Design Studio. Seattle Business Review, 30 Under 30. The walk to the stage felt longer than it was. The lights were bright. The applause blurred into something distant and warm. I stepped up to the microphone, looked out across the room. 300 faces, waiting. 5 years ago, I began. I had $340 and a high school diploma. The room quieted. Someone I trusted told me I should learn something practical, because I didn't have real potential. A ripple moved through the audience. Small, subtle. He was wrong about the potential, I said. I paused. But he was right about the trade. I let that line settle. I learned a trade, not the one he imagined, but one that taught me how to build something from nothing. I glanced down briefly, then back up. I want to thank the woman who gave me my first investment, $12,000 in a wooden box, and taught me that what you create with your hands and your mind can never be taken from you. My voice steadied. She didn't just give me money, she gave me belief. I let the silence breathe. Then I finished, and that turned out to be worth a lot more. The applause came slowly at first, then stronger, filling the room, not loud, not overwhelming, but real. And for the first time, it felt like it belonged to me. I learned the trade of building something from nothing, from sketches and deadlines, from clients who needed someone to see what they couldn't yet imagine. I paused, took a breath. I want to thank my partner, Rebecca Cole, who didn't rescue me. I let a small smile pass. She hired me. There's a difference. A few people nodded. I want to thank my professors, the ones who treated me like I belonged, before I believed it myself. My voice steadied. And I want to thank the woman who gave me my first investment, $12,000, in a wooden box. I felt it then. Not nerves. Something deeper. She taught me that your hands and your mind are the only things no one can ever take from you. I let her name settle. My grandmother. Margaret Hale. Rebecca was already standing, then the table next to her, then another. Applause rose like a wave moving through the room. A standing ovation. I didn't cry, not there. I saved that for later. Near the back of the room, someone was holding up a phone. Recording. Aunt Melissa. I had sent her an invitation weeks earlier, the only person from that side of my life I had reached out to. She didn't try to hide her tears. Didn't wipe them away. Just stood there, holding the phone steady. She sent the video that night. To my mother. I didn't say my father's name. I didn't say Ava's name. I didn't need to. The people who knew, understood, and the people who didn't. They just saw someone who had built something on her own. That was enough. The letter arrived the following Thursday. No return address. Just my office address written carefully across a plain white envelope. The kind of handwriting you use when you're not sure if you're welcome. I recognized it immediately. The slight tilt, the familiar loops. My mother's. I opened it at my desk after everyone had left. The office was quiet again. Still. Lena. It began. I watched the video Aunt Melissa sent. I watched it 4 times. I'm writing this at the kitchen table. The same one. I paused for a moment. I don't think I can sit here anymore without hearing your voice. I failed you. The words were simple, clear, no hesitation. I need to say that out loud. Because I've spent 5 years avoiding it. Your father made the decision. But I stood there and let it happen. I was afraid. I've been afraid for most of my life. Afraid of his anger. Afraid of being wrong. Afraid that if I spoke up, everything would fall apart. So I said nothing. The paper felt heavier in my hands. I said nothing while he took your money, your confidence, and your place in this family. I told myself I was keeping the peace. The letter continued. But it wasn't peace. It was fear. I see that now. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't think I deserve that. But I need you to know. I see what I did. I see who you've become. And I'm done standing in that kitchen, saying nothing. There was a pause in the handwriting, slightly heavier ink, like she had pressed harder. I've contacted a divorce attorney. I'm looking for a place to live. For the first time in 30 years, I'm choosing myself. My chest tightened. You showed me how to do that. She wrote, the night you walked out. I just wish it hadn't taken me 5 years to understand. Your grandmother would be proud of you. I know. Because I am... Mom. I set the letter down on my desk, right next to my grandmother's photo. And I cried. Not the same kind of crying I had done years ago. That had been about loss, about money, about a father who never saw me. This was different. This was grief for something that never existed. The relationship we could have had. The version of her who stood up in that kitchen and said no. The version of me who didn't have to leave to learn my worth. My father never wrote. No message. No call. Nothing. Silence was the last thing he had control over, and he held on to it. Ava sent a text. The night after the ceremony. 5 words. Congrats on the award. Lena. That was it. No apology. No acknowledgement. No mention of anything that had happened. Just words that cost her nothing. I read my mother's letter again. Then one more time. And I placed it beside the sewing box. Beside the photo. A small collection of things that had been given to me by people who, in their own ways, had believed in me. I didn't reply that night. I wasn't ready, but I didn't throw it away. That mattered. If you're still listening, you deserve to know how everything ended. My father took early retirement 6 months after that meeting. Retirement is a generous word. His company restructured. His position disappeared. At 55. With depleted savings and a house tied up in debt. There wasn't much left to negotiate. He still lives in that same house, the one he used to maintain so carefully. The paint on the shutters is starting to peel now. The neighbors are still there. They say he doesn't come outside much anymore. When people ask about me, and they do now, he changes the subject. He has never apologized. Ava works at a car dealership. Sales floor. Middletown. She's 26. Still living in that house. At least for a while. Until the truth about everything came out. She never finished her degree. The business never existed. The $175,000, my future, went into a car lease, an apartment she couldn't sustain, and nights she tried to make look like success. The debt is still there, $60,000. Ava is on a payment plan now, from what Aunt Melissa tells me. She's quieter than she used to be, less certain. Whether that's growth or just exhaustion, I don't know. She hasn't apologized. My mother moved out in June, a small one-bedroom apartment in a quiet part of the city. Clean, simple, hers. She found a full-time job at an accounting office and enrolled in a bookkeeping program at a local college. There's something almost poetic about that. Karen Ross, at 53, finally learning a trade, and for the first time in her life, she has a bank account with only her name on it. I think about that more often than I expected. As for me, I'm still here. 14th floor. The company is growing. We signed 2 new clients last month. Rebecca and I have been talking about expanding, opening a second office, and every time we talk about it, I think about where I started. A small room, a shared apartment, a borrowed bed, a job that barely covered rent. The sewing box still sits on my desk. The trust document is locked away. The folder with everything my father did, still untouched. And my mother's letter, folded carefully, resting where I can see it. Every morning, I haven't written back. Not yet. But I haven't thrown it away either. And that means something. People ask me sometimes if I'm still angry. I was, for a long time. Anger got me through those early years. It got me out of bed when I was exhausted. It kept me working when I wanted to quit. It pushed me to prove something. To someone. Anger is powerful. It burns hot. It gives you energy when you don't have anything else. But it doesn't last forever. If you hold on to it too long, it starts to consume you instead of driving you. Somewhere along the way, it changed. It didn't disappear. It became something else. Quieter. More stable. Less like fire. More like structure. I don't tell this story because I need sympathy. I built a life I'm proud of. I did it with clarity. With intention. I tell it because somewhere, right now, someone is sitting at a table, being told they're not enough, that their dreams aren't realistic, that someone else deserves the investment more, and they're starting to believe it. Don't. Because the worst thing that was taken from me wasn't the money, it was the doubt. The years I spent wondering if maybe he was right. Maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe the girl who draws didn't deserve a seat at the table. That was the debt I had to pay off. And doubt collects interest faster than anything else. I paid it. Not with revenge. Not with bitterness. With work. With proof. With the kind of quiet confidence that only comes when you stop asking for permission. The best revenge isn't loud. It's a life built so solid that the people who doubted you have to hear it anyway. I wrote the letter on a Tuesday night. Not at the office. At home. My apartment. 1 bedroom. A small kitchen. A living room with a bookshelf I assembled myself. And a plant I had somehow managed to keep alive. Nothing impressive. Everything earned. I sat at the table, a different table, one I had chosen, and I wrote to my mother. I didn't overthink it. I didn't rewrite it. I just wrote, "Mom, I got your letter. I've read it more times than I'll probably ever tell you. I'm not ready to talk yet. I don't know when I will be. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But I want you to know something. What you're doing now. Starting over. That takes courage. More than people realize. More than I think I've ever shown. I learned that the hardest loss isn't money, it's believing you were never worth it in the first place. Rebuilding your life means choosing yourself, even when no one else does. If you were in my place, would you have walked away? Or stayed and fought? I'm curious if you stayed with me until the end. Thank you for listening. If this story meant something, your one subscribe or share could help someone else who's doubting themselves right now. Your action might be the reason they don't give up. Tell me your thoughts below and be part of something that actually changes lives.